Story of America. Let Freedom Ring, Part 1. Scene 1.
Even though the Vikings had visited the Western Hemisphere long ago, Christopher Columbus is credited with discovering America in 1492. Rats! I thought I was going to find gold! Man! Columbus was actually looking for the West Indies when he landed on North America. He called it the New World. However, be like the Green. Soon, many people were leaving Europe for the New World. Some came for land, while others came for freedom. A group called the Separatists left because they wanted to worship their own church and believe in the Lord they wanted to. Stop dying with you!
Scene 2.
They decided to leave England. They got on a ship and headed for the colony of Virginia on September 1620. The ship sailed away from England. The ship was called the Mayflower, and all the people on board were called pilgrims. God bless us on this journey to Virginia. Please keep us safe. Life on the Mayflower. The ship was small because it was really a cargo ship, but it was strong enough to hold 102 passengers. Connections on the ship were not easy. There were storms. And lots of uncomfortable moments. This chamber pots. Chamber pots were what they used instead of toilets back then. After they used them, they had to dump them in the waste into the ocean. This is gross! For meals, they had potatoes and beef, but they did not have fresh vegetables or fruit. When it rained, they didn't got wet. I know you're listening. Some of the passengers hogged it. Daddy, I'm thirsty. I'm sorry, son. There's nothing I can do about it.
Scene 3.
Finally, they arrived, but they did not land in Virginia. They landed in the north and called it Plymouth Rock. Their lives were hard. The women had to wash their clothes in streams. They had such bad weather, 50 people died in the first winter. But soon, they learned to survive because of the Indians. This became the colony of Massachusetts. No fish too big, no fish too small. Huh? The Creator gives us land and food. We should appreciate all of it. Although the settlers in the north learned to survive, life was a little easier in the southern colonies. The first families arrived in South Carolina in 1670. There was lots of food, water, and wood in the forest. More and more Europeans came to settle. Slaves did the hard work in the South. The South produced a lot of tobacco.
Scene 4.
King George III was enforcing taxes against the colonists on goods imported into the colonies and goods imported out of the colonies. He wanted this money because he had a debt, a loss of money from some wars England had been fighting. Money, money, money. He also determined the colonists only send their exports to England and its territories. The colonists This cost the colonists a lot of money. Meanwhile, the mean King George was making money off their hard work. Plus, they had no say in the government called Parliament.
Unfair. This is taxation without representation. So what? It's the law and you have to pay up.
They became frustrated, refused to buy British goods, and riots formed in the streets. They began to call themselves patriots, which means they loved America enough to fight for it.
Scene 5.
King George sent redcoats, British soldiers, to monitor the colonists' behavior. In 1770, a mob gathered around the redcoat. They began throwing snowballs filled with rocks. The British were ordered not to shoot, but they panicked and started shooting.
Kablam! Kablam!
5 colonists were killed. This was called the Boston Massacre.
They killed our brothers!
Around the same time, another event happened in Boston. Many colonists liked to drink tea. When they put a tax on tea, the colonists were really mad. In November 1773, 3 British ships full of tea parked in Boston Harbor. Though the colonists really wanted the tea, they didn't drink it. On December 16th, some patriots dressed up like Indians and dumped a bunch of tea in the water. War with England seemed closer when patriots formed from farm owners and store owners, although many of them had never even touched a gun. They were determined to fight for their freedom.
This means war!
Scene 6.
War begins. The colonists formed a militia called the Minutemen. The Minutemen had weapons like rifles and cannons, but they didn't have fancy outfits like the redcoats. And they didn't have much money for clothing or good meals.
Boy, my stomach is growling, but I hate the British more than I like food.
King George told the redcoats to take the weapons away from the Minutemen. The redcoats to Concord, Massachusetts, but the patriots were watching their every move. A Minuteman climbed up on an old church tower and hung 2 lanterns. This was the signal meaning that the British were on their way. A silversmith named Paul Revere saw the signal, hopped on his horse, and dashed off to Concord on different roads. The whole time he rode, he yelled,
The British are coming! The British are coming!
Paul Revere was eventually captured by some redcoats. But the Minutemen already knew, so they waited at a bridge in Concord. When the British came, one shot was fired. Boom! This was called the shot heard around the world, and it was the beginning of the Revolutionary War.